All right, thank you everybody for joining me on Anima-saurus today. I am very lucky to have with me Dan Bryce, who's quite a keen modeler within the industry, and he's now moved through quite a lot of different places to become where he is as an educator. Thank you very much for joining me, Dan.
Thank you for having me. It's
Ah,
lovely to be on your show. We can say that now, can't we?
oh yeah, I guess it's a show now. It's officially got a name, and I've kind of given it out there. So yes, it is a show.
Very
um,
cool.
all right, so for the audience who's never actually met you before, do you want to just give us a brief overview of where you started and where you've kind of gotten yourself to within the well, you've been kind of really cool. You've done both VFX and animation, so and you've touched on games as well. So if you want to just kind of give us a brief overview of how you've got to where you've got to, that would be
Yeah,
fabulous.
yeah, sure. So I mean, it's one of those. It could be a very long story, or we could make it a quick story. Basically, it came up the other day. I always personally myself find it very interesting to find out how people got into the industry and how they kind of move into this sort of work. And I really don't have an extraordinary story. I don't think I kind of tripped into it really. I
Sort
did
of just
photography.
happened, yeah.
Yeah, it sort of just happened. Like I did photography in high school, and it just happened to have a digital subject, and I really wasn't into computers when I was in school, and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, what's this Photoshop thing all about? And next thing I know, I was just like, took a massive gamble. I just went, this looks really interesting. I love animated films, and so I thought, you know what, if people can do this as a career, that looks really exciting. And so I took a gamble and went to study somewhere, and from there I just kind of met a brilliant bunch of people, and that just led me from one thing to another until I landed my first job in industry.
So
And
you've got like a professional, bachelor, a professional degree in something.
yeah, so I've got a bachelor of creative technology and
Ooh,
animation.
ooh.
Yeah, a very fancy thing. I mean, I I mean that's on my I suppose it's on my public profile. But yeah, I studied at JMC Academy.
Yep.
Um, I started there in 2008, I think it was, and studied there for a few years. I think the thing that really made it for me was the teachers at the time. I had some brilliant teachers that came from all sorts of places. Like I had guys. Actually, you had worked with one of my old teachers,
Yep. Yeah.
Mr. Jeff Pratt from ex
Yep.
Pixar guy.
Yep.
So I learned a lot about animation from him. And then a couple of my teachers were even, I was fortunate enough that they were passing some freelance work to me, under the table.
Under the table.
Yeah,
Just like, oh
yeah,
yeah, you're a good student. Here you go.
yeah. I'm too busy. Here, you take this. So that was pretty cool, and that really helped get me a leg up into my first studio gig.
No.
So straight out of uni, I managed to land a role as a render wrangler on Happy Feet 2.
Oh, okay, yeah, right back at the start of the Renaissance era in Sydney, where it was Happy Feet.
Yeah, yeah. So that was really awesome. That was my first kind of insight into what is this industry, how does it work, what's going on, where do I fit into it. And so having that kind of that position to be able to sit back and watch a lot of the other departments and how they work, I thought it was a fantastic door in, and it allowed me to also talk with some of the pivotal people, to kind of manage to nudge my agenda of being an artist. So I could go and have a chat with like the modeling department leads and kind of say, "Oi, what's all this about? I'm interested." Um,
I so
yeah.
so the Happy Feet. Like I've heard more about the Happy Feet one production in the Carriage Works. Was Happy Feet two also done in the Carriage Works, or was that done somewhere else?
So Happy Feet 1 was done at Animalogic, over at Fox Studios, and Happy Feet 2 was at Carriageworks.
Ah, Happy Feet two
Um,
was at the Carriage Works. Yep.
yeah, so I joined them when they were at Carriageworks, but before that, and actually during, I think they were still at the Metro Theatre. Don't quote me. Um, as I said, I was never there, but I believe that the studio was quite small, started at the Metro, and then they rapidly expanded, and they needed the space, and Carriageworks was kind of a good flow over space for them.
Yeah, I've heard some good stories about the Carriage Works and how good that studio was. So
It was, the funny thing is, I've heard a lot of stories from other people as well, and I remember them very fondly because, as I said, it was my first gig. So, all of the good, the bad, and the ugly, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was brilliant. One of the funnest studios I've ever worked for.
Yeah, that's what I hear from most people. It's like it had a real character to itself, because it was the experience of going along with that film because it was just so random.
Yeah.
I heard about drips coming through the ceiling, so they were putting buckets around the place trying to keep the computers so they didn't get wet.
Well, drips is an understatement. I believe at one point in the lighting department it nearly rained. It was fantastic.
Oh my god!
We had sheets covering the computers and stuff. And because I was part of the renovating department, we were the 24/7 department, so we were running around and protecting everything, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Very cool studio. Very cool studio.
Yep. Oh, cool. So that got you. So from there, were you able to, like you said, you got connections there. Was that then going to lead you directly into something else? Did you keep trucking along after that?
Yeah, so that led me into my first artist role. So I managed to pick up a modeling. I was contracted as a modeler, but I was fortunate enough to do quite a few other things as well at Fuel VFX. And the big contract there was Prometheus. That was really cool. So I got to throw some of my junior modeling skills at Prometheus and got to work on some amazing shots with some amazing other modelers. And it was a fantastic team there, actually. But that also allowed me to work on a whole range of commercials. And that's one of the things I loved about Fuel is I came in every day and to an extent you kind of went, well, what's my job today? Some days they'd have me texturing, some days there was one point where they actually challenged me a little bit and said, hey, you're going to be rigging something today. And I went, I've never rigged anything in my life. Oh, my God. Okay. All right.
Got to love that. Yeah. Throw you in the deep end and say, all right, go for it.
Absolutely. But they certainly didn't let you drown. Like, they had amazing support people at any point. I mean, in the modeling department, too, I was fortunate that I had an amazing rigger, Gerard, sitting right behind me, and he was able to help me out with bits and pieces, and it was fantastic. It really was an amazing learning experience. It's one of the things that I think had led me into where I'm, and I'll get to the end of the story eventually of how I got to where I am, but one of the things that led me to education was I have a very big passion for learning, and something about this industry is I feel like if you stop learning, then you're dead.
Yeah, you sink pretty quickly because the whole industry itself does move quite quickly. Like we'll get to as well. It's like software changes nearly every year. So
yeah, absolutely. Like the skills and the workflow are what's really kind of important. Understanding the concepts. What button to push, that can change.
Yeah. Okay, so that's got you into now special effects, VFX house, and rapid turnover with commercials. So what else is on the agenda for Dan Bryce?
From there, that's where I managed to move on to Anima-Logic. So a studio that I had applied for millions and millions of times and didn't quite have the credentials to get there. But through the experience that I managed to land at some of those other studios, I was able to work on the first Lego movie as a modeler. Yeah, and that was an amazing experience as well. Being able to, I think I remember kind of chatting to a few people and they were like, oh, so what was it like modeling a million bricks over and over and over again? And it was a lot of fun, being able to see the process and the challenge of, because basically one of the rules that had been put in place for us was that it had to be built in real life, was kind of the task, was you want the kids to be able to see what's on the screen and be able to build that in real life. So they kind of tried to nail that down pretty quick. I mean, we found little workarounds here and there where we possibly could, but yeah, it was very, very cool.
So were you a Lego kid as a kid, or
Not really, no. And that was, my brother was. I remember there's buckets of Lego sitting around our house at any given time, but myself, no. I think that's one of the things that's been interesting for me is like there's, I wasn't really all into animation as a kid. I wasn't really into games as a kid. I wasn't into Lego as a kid. And yet all these things have dramatically influenced and changed the course and direction of my life through my career.
Yeah, right.
It's been very weird. I'm an oddball.
Yeah, nothing. You'll find that with the industry as a whole anyway. That's quite an eclectic group of people working in it. All right, so that gets you into Animal. So after that, you were, you've now modelled on a full CG movie as well as special effects movies. Which way did you focus your energy after that then?
Well, the funny thing is, as I was getting into Animal to work on the Lego Movie, that was the pinnacle for me, because up until that point, that's what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be working on animated features. So the dream, kind of for me at that time, was always Pixar, DreamWorks, those kinds of studios. That's what I really wanted to be doing.
Yep.
But ever since literally that point in time onwards, I've been VFX all the way. And not really by choice, it was just happenstance. That's just the way the industry was around me, around the area, people I knew. And so, yeah, I think from there I went down to Melbourne. I was working at Allura on I, Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a really interesting production because I was able to push my texturing skills. I'd never done really all that much texture. There's a little bit that Fuel got me doing here and there, but this was the first time they went, so that model that you just made, you now have to texture the whole thing. And you're like, oh.
You're like, I didn't unwrap it, because at this point, I dare say, you still got to unwrap everything. It's not like, you can paint directly on anything with substance or something like that. You still got to actually technically unwrap everything.
I think at that time we were I think it was Mudbox. I think we're doing a lot of our texturing in Mudbox. And that's why I suppose it's still one of my lovely go-tos. I'll still use things like Substance and Mari and stuff like that, but whenever I get the chance, I do love opening up my box and doing a little bit of sculpting or texturing in that.
Fond memories. You just go, oh, I remember this.
Yeah, it's very close to my heart.
All right, Melbourne. Because I know, now you're tripping around the countryside. You're out of Sydney eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yes, finally got out of Sydney. But that was only for a very short stint, really. I'd only done that for 3 to 4 months, somewhere around there. And around that time was when Sydney really dried up. Well, Australia in general really dried up.
Yep.
And I was kind of looking at one of two options, really. I had to move away from VFX and delve into something a little bit different, or I had to get out of Australia. And so basically I was just before I made any kind of big dramatic moves, I just kind of did a bit of a round, through some of my contacts. And that was actually when I contacted Jeff.
Yep.
Mr. Jeff Pratt. And I was like, so, hey mate, look, Sydney's a little bit dry at the moment, but I'm coming back up. Have you heard of anything around town that's going? And he turned around and said, yeah, my job. Do you want it? And that's where, as I said, like I never, I think when I had first got out of college, I was like, the idea of teaching could be interesting, maybe. But I really didn't have any plans to. I just kind of fell into it. Actually, fun fact, I don't know if I ever told you, just for the audience, me and Kim have worked together. Surprise.
Yeah.
I nearly quit in my first week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I just, it felt weird. It didn't feel right to, I had a little bit of experience, but I certainly didn't feel qualified to be teaching. It just felt strange. And I ended up having a chat with a few of the guys and, my boss at the time and even Jeff, and he said, look, keep with it for a little bit and we'll show you the ropes and go from there. And as it turned out, I think it was probably one of the best experiences I think I've ever had, because in my mind, up until that point, what I thought of teaching was you had to be 30 years experience, a master at your craft, and that's the only way. And I think I didn't realize that there's actually another way, that you can still be learning and developing your own skill sets and growing as an artist, and passing on the knowledge that you've picked up through those experiences. So it really was a big shift for me in my view of teaching in this industry and being a trainer. So that shifted things dramatically for me. I've kind of, obviously been back in industry and back again, but I think training at heart is really where I want to be.
Yeah, because it's an interesting thing, like me as well. Like when I first got into teaching, it's like I didn't know if I knew enough about everything. I had my specialty. I got in as an animator. So I was an animator when I got in, and I'm like, okay, I can teach animation, no problem. You want me to model? I know the basics, and really, what students want from you is just a little bit more than what they need to know.
Hmm.
If you know something and you can pick it up before class, then that's usually what they want. It's just like, oh yeah, cool. So this is where we go next. All right, you just got
Yeah.
to be able to. You don't need to know it in depth or anything. You just got to be able to know what information to pass on to them. So.
Yeah. Sometimes just point them in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, especially with the sort of stuff that we were teaching. It is more adult education. It's as we get up, we get older. People like to just know, oh, what direction do I need to look in to find the information, and then they're off and they'll
Yeah.
start learning themselves. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so yeah, well yeah. So you get into this learning institution, which is great. Teaching is I've got a new profound respect for teachers from actually standing up there and actually teaching a class. You go, shit, it's a lot harder than it looks.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, you did mention that you kind of you bounced in and out for a little bit. So what kind of after a bit, what drew you back into going back into the industry again? Because I mean, yeah, you'll get into that. You didn't actually jump in and go back on the tools to be modeling as such again. You got
No. Well, that was the thing. I think that, and that's why I think I loved teaching so much, is it forced my hand to do other things.
yep,
And industry allowed me to do that in some ways, but teaching just drops you in and says, "Here you go, figure that out." And so one of the things that I really loved about it was that challenge, that aspect of pushing myself into an area that I really had nothing, no no right being there, you know. And so basically, I fell in love with that idea of I need to do something that I've never done before, and I kind of wanted to be able to every time I jumped into a new role, I wanted to be doing something different,
yep.
and learning new skills and learning new workflows. So basically, I decided to leave teaching for a little while and go into architectural visualization. Um,
Mm.
so it's a slightly different kind of way of approaching my work.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
suppose arcades, yeah, you're still modeling and you're still looking at objects and such and recreating it in 3D space. But why ArcViz? It is very different to then animation as such or
Yeah.
previz. But
Um, I think there was a couple of things that appealed to me. So one, the position that came to me was out of the blue. I didn't really kind of seek it out. It just sort of fell in my lap. And one of the things that appealed about it was the fact that I wasn't going to work for an architectural visualization studio. I was going to work for an architecture firm, and I was their only artist. That was kind of
oh,
something they were working on maybe building up a department. So basically, I was coming on board, and it was free reign, go. And so I had to do everything, and that was something that really appealed to me.
yeah,
Was wow, okay, this could be really interesting. I have to. There's no one to fall back onto. I'm doing everything by myself,
total
and
control. It's like, oh,
total
I've got
control.
control.
Absolutely, and there was prospect of look, if this kind of moves into a direction that we like, maybe there's the opportunity to expand this and open up either a separate kind of faction, or even just a department, and you could run that department. So there was prospects in it as well, which is pretty cool.
And you got to go back to photography as well.
Yes, and that I think that was I spotted. Actually, I think I spotted you
Yeah,
at
we,
one point.
we were kind of wandering around the city and just ran into each
Yeah,
other.
I ran into a couple of people, and I was running around just kind of capturing photos of things like HDRIs and stuff like that, so I could use that in my work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it got me doing a lot of like a lot of things I hadn't really done before. It got me doing things in a workflow I hadn't done before. Like there were some times when they would walk in, they'd slap not really a blueprint, but yeah, a blueprint down on my desk and say, "We need this by 5 o'clock this afternoon. Go." And so there was days where you'd come in and you think you're doing one thing, and then by the end of or by 7:30, like 8 o'clock in the morning, you're kind of going, "Oh, okay, this day's going to go very
Changed.
differently." Yeah,
Oh,
and
cool.
so again, that was something else that I thoroughly enjoyed that challenge of it. I only did that for about a year,
Yeah.
and then I kind of moved on. Architectural stuff was fun, and I think I got what I wanted out of it. And I definitely revisit it one day. I think,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah. I think it is something I'd go back to, but
Yeah.
not not probably anytime soon.
Yeah,
If,
right.
and to give you a bit of a scope on how much I enjoyed it, what was that? That was 6 years ago,
Jesus. Shit.
and so
That long.
I'm
Okay.
I'm still not prepared to go back just yet.
But
Need
it's getting there.
more time.
It's like, yeah, it's just kind of sitting there going, oh yeah, I can remember how much fun it was, and maybe when nothing else is around, I'll venture back towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think when I go back, because I do see myself doing it again, but I would do it under a studio.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, having a buffer between you and the architects is stupendously important.
Yeah, right. So
I'll tell you that much.
that was a hard learnt lesson, that one.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay. I mean, there's one more point which I know, or two more places which you've worked at, which I know we'll get into. So let's just kind of skip over the architects one
Yeah.
and get back to
Where did
the big fun ones.
Yeah, so I think from there was a bit of me coming back to training, and most of my training as an institute has all happened at one place, AIE,
Yep.
Academy of Interactive Entertainment, just here in Sydney.
Yep.
But I had a couple of years ago, I think around 2017, I got a call from a few friends over in Canada, and from MPC.
Yep.
And they were saying, "Hey, look, we've got an influx of crazy amount of work at the Montreal studio. Would you be interested in coming over?" And I just had no reason not to.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic opportunity. I spoke with the head of department over there in the environments department for the DMP, and it just sounded too good to be true. I was like, "Brilliant! Bring me over. Sounds good."
Yeah, I like that. You don't have to pay for anything. Just kind of we'll fly over there and we'll put you up for a couple of weeks and.
Yeah, they treated me really well. I mean, it's like any studio, I suppose. Like, you have people that have good experiences and a bit rougher experiences, but they treated me fantastic. They paid to bring me over. They organised pretty much all the paperwork, actually.
Oh, cool. Yep.
Yeah, and they were even as generous to say, look, here's the projects that are on. What do you want?
Oh, they even gave you options. Nice.
Yeah. And I picked Dumbo because there was big, exciting projects. Some would say bigger and more exciting and I maybe chose wrong. But in my mind, I loved picking Dumbo because I always was a big fan of Tim Burton.
Yep.
More so in the past than recently. But and it was also a big Disney production. And everything had been going. They'd been doing all these Disney remakes recently. And I just thought, I've got to get on board with this. This sounds really interesting.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah. So, cool. Yeah, so that was Dumbo. You were over there for what, 6 months? Was it a 6-month contract or?
Nearly 9.
Nearly 9.
Was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things they did, which was really cool, and it wasn't something really planned because I had been doing teaching, and so I was like, look, I want to get away from teaching and do a little something else. But they were like, look, we actually could do with someone in our academy, the MPC Academy, just for a little while, but no pressure. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. And I was like, yeah, okay, look, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
And again, it turned out to be one of the best things I ever did because it got me learning katana.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. So one of the directions that the 3D DMP department manager really wanted was, I want a lot of my guys are using, particular renderers like I think it was V-Ray predominantly at the time.
Yeah.
But the rest of the studio, as far as the lighting department, and everything, they're all in Katana with RenderMan. And so, she wanted to make this big push for the rest of her department to maybe pick up the same sort of workflow.
Yeah.
And so it was a perfect place to start was the academy. Train these guys up, move them onto the floor, and we'll see how we go. And so obviously it forced my hand to learn the things. I need to teach it. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, cool. Okay. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, a lot of people don't think that there's like multiple different production lines within one studio. But like you said, there's one department using V-Ray and yet the other department's using, something else as a renderer. And that just kind of, a lot of people don't realize how chaotic productions actually are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and particularly because depending on the impact of, the overall workflow, if it doesn't matter, then who cares? As long as we're getting our output from you, then it doesn't
It
really
doesn't
matter.
matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
that was fantastic because basically it meant that in whatever downtime I had, I was running from department to department, chatting to the comp team, chatting to the lighting team, saying, look, how do you guys use Katana, and what's the best way that you guys found to use this, and yeah. So basically, I came away with this extra skill set, and once
yeah.
the academy was over, I was then working with some of the guys I had trained on the production floor and utilizing those same sort of skills on some shots. So they made me key environment artist for Dumbo.
Woohoo!
Yeah, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, along with a couple other people, there was me. There was, I think, at the time, it was a very small team in the environment department. We were, I think, about 7 people,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
yeah, me and one other person were key artists, and we helped kind of bring some pretty big shots together, which was really cool.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, that's where you kind of go, you know what, yeah, when you work in the industry, you go, yeah, we had some key shots in the whole movie, and it, had quite an impact on those shots. Yeah. Yeah, you know
Mm.
what? You get quite a kick out of your job when stuff like that sort of happens.
Yeah, well, particularly because I'd never done any book development before.
Yeah,
So
right.
that
Yep.
was my first opportunity to kind of you know try to build up Tim Burton's vision in conjunction, obviously, with the VFX supervisor. We were doing a lot of back and forth with London,
Oh, yeah.
and they were
Yep.
basically, we'd come up with a look, we'd send it over to the VFX supervisor, we'd get feedback, do that kind of back and forth for a little while, and then we'd send it off to Tim, and would get Tim Burton's feedback, and it would come back with love this, hate this, or this kind of thing. And yeah, so that was my first time kind of developing the look of a
Look.
shot. That
Yeah.
was something that I hadn't ever done before. Very,
Oh,
very
cool.
cool.
Cool. Yeah. And of course, after that 9 months, you ended up landing back in Sydney again.
Yes, I can't escape Sydney. It's something that just I'm trapped by.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So is that then? Was that your last special last main educational place again, or outside of that before you returned to AIE, or?
Yeah, so that was the kind of last time I had done any training. Oh no, any specific hands-on artistic training.
Ah,
Um, but then I had jumped back into Animal Logic
yeah,
as an L&D supervisor.
yeah, right,
So that's when they have another L&D supervisor as well, Drew Collins, fantastic L&D supervisor. Well, actually, I think he was L&D manager, if I get his title correct. And yeah, basically that allowed me to facilitate a lot of their in-house training. It also allowed me to kind of take the reins a little bit on some of the training courses that they do. So
cool,
Animal run a lot of really cool courses, like rotoscoping courses. They did roto animation, and they even did more recently a character effects one that went really successfully.
yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was in the lead up for Peter Rabbit 2.
Ah, cool, cool.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, it's something which I kind of see now happens more and more, especially with big houses more in Australia, is that they do have their own in-house education route, because they have what they know exactly what they want to get out of their students. So they do it's almost like an additional course after you get out of college. It's like, oh, you've gone through
Yeah.
a private college. Here's getting your skills down in the software and the pipeline we want you to have before you actually get on the floor. Do you see
Yeah.
that? Do you see that more people do that as well? Especially since you're in a private college as well. Do you actually include that sort of education in what you try to teach?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things that we kind of try to get through as much as possible to our students is you need to understand why you're doing something, why you're doing it the way you're doing it, because those kinds of nitty gritty, how to do it this way will change.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever done every studio I've ever worked for, everything gets done in a slightly different way. The way that their pipelines work can be greatly different.
yeah,
but the way their workflows can slightly shift from place to place. So it's important that, what I'm trying to push onto my students is you need to know where you sit kind of roughly in a pipeline, what's coming before you and what's coming after you, and then how is it does move through and transition. Otherwise, if all you know how to do is click A, click B, 1, 2, 3, unfortunately, that's just not really good enough.
Yeah.
Because one of the first things you're going to get when you jump into the studio is a small window of time to learn. Look, this is how we run, but there's an expectation from most studios that the junior they pull on already has the skill set to a degree.
Yep.
All we're requiring of you is to learn how we do things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite an interesting industry in that way that I guess, especially in Australia, because we're such a small industry,